So my name is Tommy Lee, and I am a solutions engineer here at Profix, and I'll be taking you guys through the software and going through the overview of Profix. I'm also joined with Tom Schmidt, who is an actual customer of Profix. He's actually from Convergent, and he's also in the high-tech industry as well. So what I want to do today is start off with a quick overview of the software and really how it functions and how it's interconnected with all your different applications, and also just a brief company background. Then we're going to jump straight into the software. We're going to do some live presentations and really look at the things that you can do within Profix. And then finally, we're going to end off with Tom, who's going to explain how he's using Profix and just share his overall experience with the software itself. So generally, what I want to do is just start off with what is corporate performance management. So at a very, very high level, many of your environments today look like this. You have different source systems. You have different streams of information that you're pulling into Excel manually. And then you have your different users. Each department, owner, each cost center, functional area, they all have to pull information and save information back into Excel. So the whole concept here is because you're so integrated with Excel, it gets very, very hard to save down your information. You're going to have multiple versions of different spreadsheets. You have many versions that get lost in your email. So then eventually down the line, you're going to have even more additional systems, right? You might have something for high-tech specific platforms. You might have different POS systems. So as your organization grows and as more people are kind of living in Excel, you kind of go into this very, very complicated environment that is predominantly in Excel, and it gets very, very confusing. So actually it doesn't have to be this way. So what we do at Profix is we automate the management cycle of the consolidation, so aggregating all your different numbers from all of your different departments. We also automate the reporting, so not only your actuals being pulled into Profix, but all your plan numbers are being saved down from your individual owners. So that way you could look at different variances, you could do very thorough analysis, and you could do very detailed modeling and planning for your outlook going forward. So what we do is we do budgeting and planning. So everything that you see here, from expense planning or payroll planning, anything that you need to do as part of your budgeting or forecasting process, we're actually able to do within Profix. So budgeting and planning is something that people often use Profix for. We also have reporting and analytics. So again, your actuals are in the system. You have your different budget numbers in the system. You would also have your different forecasts in the system. So we have very, very robust reporting capabilities, which I'm going to show you in the demo itself. There's ad hoc reporting where you can slice and dice, really pivot on any dimension that you would want to. So things like customers, products, various departments, companies, these are all things that we see very commonly. And then finally, we're going to touch on how you could drill across the transaction level details and also how you could update all your different corporate packages using Profix as well. So we also have very thorough consolidation capabilities. So this is actually the financial consolidation piece where we could actually consolidate whether you have different currencies, whether you have partial ownerships, whether you have different consolidation methods. So whether you have US GAAP, or if you have IFRS, these are all different things that we can support for your intercompany eliminations. And lastly, we have a very robust workflow and automation. So if you think about the real world right now, you're probably exporting a lot of things manually to Excel. You're sending out Excel templates through your Outlook. You're manually consolidating all of these different Excel templates. So we have a very robust workflow that essentially streamlines all of this, and really the Profix software actually handles all of this entire process for you, saving you lots of time. And so lastly, these are just some highlights from Profix. So basically, we were established in 1987. We are privately owned, so we actually have no external funding. Okay, and we also, our headquarters are based out of Canada and actually Toronto itself. We also have over 3,000 customers in 100 different countries, and most importantly, the software is made by finance for finance. So what this ultimately means is that there's actually no IT involvement for you. It has very little programming, so most of all of this is administered by finance, and so it's just a matter of configuration for you. And we're also recognized by leading industry analysts. So if you think about Gartner, if you think about Dresner, these are all things that we are recognized for. So really, ultimately, how do we do this, right? How do we pull from all these different source systems? How do we automate your budgeting, forecasting, all of your financial reporting? So in a nutshell, what we do is we pull all these different sources using our data integration. So we have an import wizard that essentially pulls all these different streams of information into Profix. Okay, so using our import wizard, which is actually embedded into the product, you could actually pull your actuals or whatever information you need on a scheduled basis. So a lot of times our customers want to pull once a day, or maybe they want to pull twice a day, maybe once a week, and maybe during month end or during quarter end, they want to be able to pull on demand. So these are all things that we can schedule with you. It's really easy with our import wizard. And the key concept here is we also have very centralized calculations. So if you think about the way you're coming up with calculations right now, let's say you have 40 different spreadsheets and you calculated gross margins on each one. You would have to update 40 different spreadsheets if that calculation ever changed. So within Profix, we have very centralized calculations where you would update it in the model itself, and automatically it's going to distribute into all the 40 other different templates. So that way you don't have to go into every single spreadsheet and having to manually update all that information. So finally, once all this information is in and once all your budget data is being input by your end users, you now have a really, really good window into your database and really ultimately into your business. You have your actuals, you have your plan numbers. Now you can look at variance percentages. You could drill down certain accounts. You could drill down certain customers. You could drill down on certain products. And now what you're doing is instead of focusing on things that are manual processes, you can really focus more now on really understanding your business and from a strategy standpoint, figure out the best way moving forward. We're fully integrated with Office, so in terms of Word, PowerPoint, Excel, you can obviously push data into all these different applications. If you wanted to push data from Excel into Profix, you have that capability as well. We have actually an Excel add-in. And last but not least, we are fully integrated mobilely as well. So in terms of just accessing Profix through your laptop, through your cell phones, through your tablets, these are all very common things that our clients use us for. And last but not least, you can always drill back into your transactional details. So any data piece that we import in and you actually want to tie back into the transactions into your source systems, we're actually able to retrieve all those different data pieces and all those transactions into Profix. So that way you actually never have to leave the application itself. So within one unified solution, you could actually drill back, get all the transactions that you want to see, so that way your different operational users aren't going to obviously nag you or send you emails and really wonder what's going on. So what I want to do now is actually jump into the software. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just launch the Profix software right here. So this is a good window of a dashboard that you could typically see within Profix. So as soon as you log in, whether you're an operational person, whether you're a department manager, whether you're in finance, IT, whether you're an executive, these dashboards are all customized to show you exactly what you need to see. So in my example here, I am looking at my revenue. So in our example, we would pull all this information in again, and our dashboards are fully interactive. So for example, right on the top left, I'm looking at my top 5 different customers. If I wanted to maybe hide one of these customers, it's very easy for me to do. All I would have to do is just right-click, and just hide it. Or if I wanted to drill back into my transactional system, what I could do is right-click, hit on the cube, and what it's doing now is retrieving all the transactions that make up that particular slice of the pie. So here I have my invoice date, my PO number, my sales reps, my customer names. I could sort on invoice amounts as well. So this is just imitation of how we would basically connect and be able to retrieve all the transactions for you. So a lot of times, you would also want to be able to pivot and slice and dice on your information as well. So on the top right, you notice that we have a sales outlook. Because of seasonality, we notice that our numbers, our sales are going to increase as we kind of progress through the year. So what if I wanted to really analyze this information in more detail? So it's actually really easy for me to do. If I click on this little spaceship here, what inherently it's going to do is it's going to strip away all the formatting that you see on that dashboard. And now I could essentially drill on anything I want. So if I wanted to, let's say, take a look at customer group 1 and look at all the customers within that group, I could see what the gross sales are for each and every single one of them. If I wanted to maybe understand things from a product perspective, I could just drag and drop my products into my rows. And then right away I could see all the different products and what their gross sales are. Now a lot of times what we find is people really want to focus on actually the gross margin, because that's the most important piece that they care about. If you have higher margins, you want to push more of that product. So we could actually come into our accounts and just pick our gross margin. So the whole concept here is by being able to go into this ad hoc view, you're able to slice and dice on products, on customers. You can look at different periods of time. You can pick on any accounts that you want to. You can look at your actuals, plan numbers, just by being able to drag and drop. So now I'll transition back over to the dashboard and show you a few more functionalities. So one of the things that we see very often as well is you want to be able to analyze your corporate expense, right? You want to analyze how much you're spending. And so this is a graph that kind of trends out exactly how you're going to spend the money going forward. Now, a lot of times what we've noticed within the industry is that people actually also want to be able to look at things in a more detailed fashion from a dashboard. So in our example here, what we've done is we've springboarded over to a different report that will give us more detail. So it actually has all of our different operating expenses. It breaks it down by my various locations as well. And so again, the reports are very, very dynamic. I could pick different periods of time if I wanted to. I could pick different versions, whether it's my actual, my plan, whether it's a forecast version. And so the whole concept here as well is that you could drill in and retrieve any of the transactional information that are associated within a report. Okay. So what I'm doing here is I'm drilling down into my office expense, and now I can see all the different transactions that would make up my office expense. So now I'm going to transition over back to the dashboard one more time. Okay. So from here, one of the things that we're actually able to do is we're actually able to support daily, weekly, as well monthly, quarterly, yearly planning. So in our example here, if you take a look on the bottom left, is I can actually see the number of units that I've sold relative to what I've actually planned. You'll notice that week 1 is actually a lot lower than what I initially anticipated. So I can actually drill into week 1 and look at things from a daily perspective. So I notice that January, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, they're all relatively low. So if I wanted to really investigate this, let's say I'm a sales director, I could right-click, hit on this little clipboard, and again, what it's going to do is transition me over to a report that's going to generate more information for me to really understand things from a sales and from an analytical perspective. So what I'm going to do is just load this information here. So in this example, I could basically track my daily gross sales. So from day to day, I could actually see exactly how I'm doing from a sales perspective. It looks like January 1st. I have a comment here that says snowstorm shut down. So it looks like there was a 10 days worth of blizzard. And so maybe that's why I sold less units. I could also see that there's another comment here in January 12th that things are starting to return back to normal. So just by being able to drill into reports, I can see exactly how my different units are trending. If I wanted to get more information and break things down by various products, I have that flexibility here where I'm actually including the products and the various accounts. And as I go down, I could also break things down more granularly. So if I want to compare things from a daily perspective, weekly perspective, monthly perspective, I could see things from actuals to plan, and then look at the variance and the various variance percentages as well. So what I actually want to do from now is actually move over into how your end users would be interacting with Profix and how they would be inputting data into the system. So what I'm going to do is launch this workflow over here. And so these tasks that you see on the left are user-specific. So these are specific to a particular end user depending on what access they have within the budgeting process and really how they contribute. So this particular person, Alfred Perry, we need to do an operating expense input. We need to do some CapEx, some sales planning. So what we want to do first is actually move into the operating expense plan. So in our example here, this is what an end user would see. So this is just a high-level example of a template that I've mocked up here. But in a high level, what you see here is all your different operating expense accounts going along the left-hand side. You also have your latest plan version to use as a benchmark. So a lot of times you might want to have last year's actuals. You might want to have maybe like a rolling 12 months. You might want to have another budget version. So you could actually change this and customize this to whatever layout you're accustomed to. And then what you see in yellow, these are all our budget numbers. So these are numbers that we want to input going forward for next year. So how do you input numbers into Profix? Super easy. So for example, if I wanted to use a formula for lodging, I could use 9 times 800 if I wanted to. So any Excel formulas that you would typically have, you could use that in Profix as well. Now, where we differentiate is our ability to spread on data. So for example, let's say you, in your world, you wanted to plan lodging. So let's just say that we got a super awesome corporate rate, and we're actually not going to spend $81,000 for the year for lodging, but we're only going to spend, let's say, $76,000. So you could actually input numbers on a yearly perspective and have Profix allocate that down into the individual months. So let's say you could use 76,000, you could divide that by 12, or you could spread it based on the existing seasonality you have within your numbers, or you could spread based on any parameters you want. So a lot of times we see people, they might want to spread on last year's actuals. You could spread based on revenue if an account is based off of revenue, or if, let's say, the lodging is a direct correlation to FTEs, I could actually come here, pick my FTEs account, click OK again, and automatically the system's going to figure out the calculation and spread my 76,000 based on the FTEs that I have. Other key features that I just want to highlight before we kind of transition over is the fact that you can also make people plan at a detailed level. So let's say you didn't want people to just plan at an account level, but you actually want them to give you the underlying details behind that planning number. So you could right-click and make it a requirement that people give you their schedules and all the details behind their spending. So in my example here, I could see exactly where this particular user is expecting to spend their money and how many tickets they're expecting to purchase and when they're expecting to incur that expense. Okay. And then finally, you can also have cell comments. So our cell comments, they're actually stored within the database. So wherever you put a comment, that comment will always follow the number. It'll always follow it into a report. It'll also follow it into the slicing and dicing mode. So essentially, Profix becomes your central repository not only for your accounts, but also becomes your central repository for also your line item details. So 5 years from now, if you're trying to understand why your numbers are high, why they were low, you'll always have that central repository for you. You could also attach any files that you wanted to as well, so any PDFs, Excel, Word documents, you can always attach it to the comments as well. So what I want to do now is actually transition back over to the PowerPoint and just kind of touch on some customers that we have that are part of the high-tech industry. So we have tons of different customers. So Convergent, which is who Tom is going to speak and who he works for, is one of our really good customers. Other high-tech customers we have that are noticeable is obviously Microsoft, which is actually one of our really, really big partners. Sonosite, which is part of Fuji Films, as well as Intellectual Ventures, which is a very good venture company. So what I actually want to do now is actually transition over to Tom, and he's actually going to take you through exactly what he experienced with Profix, how Profix is helping him out in his organization, and just overall implementation methodologies and really the problems that he's solving by using Profix.
Thank you, Tommy. We are located in the suburbs of Chicago, and in Schaumburg, Illinois, right by the big Woodfield Mall. Last year's revenue was over $500 million. We've been around since 2001. We have 2,500 colleagues across the globe, and our business is that we're the world's leading integrator of electronic security, fire alarm, and life safety controls, mass notification, building automation, and healthcare technologies controls in major buildings. We have customers all across the globe. And one of our mottos is that we have a global reach because we have that big, web of all of our locations across the globe, but we have a local focus. So because we want to have the local focus and be able to know all of the rules and regulations in each of those countries, we actually have offices throughout the globe. So we have offices in the United States, Canada, the UK, Ireland, Germany, Switzerland, China, India, Singapore, Taiwan, Japan, and Australia. We're growing very quickly. I've been with the company a little over 3 years, and since I joined the company, we've had 12 acquisitions, and that was one of the drivers for us to look for a solution like Profix. But there was this massive growth, and what we were presented with were all of those ERP systems that are listed on the slide that's up on the screen. So, we had a construction industry specific ERP, and then with all the acquisitions, one of our challenges were, do you want to change when you acquire a company? Do you want to change everything that they do, including their ERP system on day one? Or do you want to, integrate them to your culture first? And then after that, after they get their feet wet, with the culture and the day-to-day processes, then to change their ERPs. Using Profix, we were able to do that, and I'll get into those details in a little bit. But it's everything from QuickBooks, Great Plains, Sage, and then one from an acquisition in Switzerland that's called My Factory. So I come from the technology side. I'm the Vice President of Business Technology with Convergent. And under those responsibilities, I lead Convergent's technology strategic direction. I oversee the development of all of our business applications, everything from our customer service portal to our sales estimating and proposal generation system and the data warehousing platform of Profix. As Tommy talked about it in the beginning, the software is really managed by finance. Our team oversees the technical installation of the software, and once we set it and got it going, the IT involvement has been very, very small. And then we also oversee the management of the technical infrastructure, everything from the wide area network devices and servers all across those locations. So, we have a big footprint to be able to maintain, and then the coordination of our help desk across all of those locations. So our business challenges is that we had very little visibility into the high level and minute details of our day-to-day operations across all of those locations. The main ERP Spectrum had very good reports, but there was a challenge with some high-level roll-up reporting out of it. And because of that, colleagues were creating their own spreadsheets that linked to the ERP's database. And with those spreadsheets, we had very low visibility into the accuracy of the data. With the spreadsheet hell that Tommy talked about on one of his first slides. That was some of the symptoms that we were trying to correct, both on the day-to-day operations and then in the consolidations. As we were growing and growing, as I talked about, we had very little visibility into all of those consolidations and be able to get through that. And then what's driving us to all of those locations, I should talk about that for a second, is that our global account business. So we're growing organically, through natural growth, but our global accounts like Microsoft, like Sony, like NBC Universal. They have footprints across the globe, and because we service them so well in our initial footprint of the United States and Canada, those companies said, we would really like you to be our service provider in Singapore. So that kind of drove us to all of these locations, but we had very little visibility into the profitability of those accounts, and that's where we looked at Profix. So we looked at a bunch of, we did a paper-based RFP, and we looked at a bunch of different solutions, and our desired features were on the screen. And so we wanted a solution that had the ability to do those consolidations because, we were growing so quickly, but also to be able to create those custom analysis cubes for us to be able to analyze that day-to-day business. We were looking for ease of ad hoc reporting. Because we're a technical organization, a lot of people are familiar with Excel, so we wanted something that, that would be familiar. If people were familiar with the pivot table sort of functionality of Excel, we wanted something that mimicked that. I always say that the ad hoc reporting, in Profix is pivot table on steroids. We wanted the ability to produce templated reports so that way people weren't having to do those ad hoc reports, all the time. And then we wanted fine-grained security, because of the locations throughout the globe. We didn't want the people in Singapore to be able to see the data for the people in Switzerland, because a lot of that, from a budget standpoint, in a loose sense has salary information. So we wanted to make sure that we had it set up that way. So our implementation, when we selected Profix, some time back, the cloud-based deployment wasn't an option at the time. But if it were available today, and knowing what we know now, we'd probably stay with the same decision with hosting it locally on premise. And it was only because, we had the servers here to be able to support it. And once the installation and the software is configured and set up, the environment is really easy to administer. Our finance department has taken the lead in being able to do that. And our early focus of implementation, because we were getting a lot of those acquisitions in that first year when we did the 3 in that 1 year, we started out with the financial consolidation cube, and it took us about probably 2 months or so to get it operational. And one of the challenges that we had when we did that was because our ever-growing entity structure, we had to determine what roll-up points, what places do you want to have in your hierarchy, so that way, people could see that we're responsible for that level of the organization. They wanted to be able to see the reports at that level. And with our organization structure, each of those levels within the organization, they're responsible for their own P&L. So, so that's why it was very important for them to be able to see it. And we also wanted to consolidate several entity structures and make it fit that, or account structures, and make it fit within the hierarchy. Because as I mentioned before, we wanted to keep those organizations on their own ERP, and we wanted them to be able to, when they looked at the data, not see it in the corporate level chart of accounts, but be able to see it, in what they're used to in their daily basis. So, that way their day-to-day job really didn't change. They're just going to a different place to see their reports. And the implementation went really smoothly. Once we set up those entity and account structures, the professional services team from Profix was great. And the particular consultant that we had really helped us out with being able to understand how to visualize the entity and the account structure and be able to know how to structure it and set it up so that way, we got out of it what we want. During the first 100 days, oops, I want one slide too many. During the first 100 days, we built that financial cube, and we created balance sheet, income statement, and cash flow reports based off of that. We created drill across into the ERPs, especially in a spectrum, so that way people can see the source level data. We roughed out the budgeting process using Profix as the consolidation point. I'll talk a little bit about the first year of how we did our budgeting, the first year that we had Profix. And then we transferred the cube building knowledge to the Convergent team, so those additional cubes, after the Profix consultants left, we were able to take care of. So from an integration standpoint, the picture that Tommy had in the first slide or so, we have a bunch of different integration points from our Spectrum ERP, where we're pulling summary level GL data for the consolidation, and the customer project information. And we don't do our internal projects like the implementation of Profix or a Spectrum upgrade. It's all the customer-facing projects. And then the service contracts and time and material based data that we have with our customers. And then we pull in the other data via trial balance exports from those source systems. So a little bit about how we automated some of the finance processes. So our budgeting process, we do it twice a year formally, once for the new fiscal year and then a reforecast at mid-year. Each one of those people that are responsible for the P&L at their levels in the organization, they use reports that are now in Profix. They use the reports to be able to manage it in between those two formal standpoints. But so we do it twice. Our financial planning and analysis department verifies the revenue and budget data that's inside of Profix, and then the business leaders use it to look at their past periods, the performance, costs, et cetera, to be able to estimate, the new sets of data. And we did like the capabilities inside of Profix, as Tommy demonstrated, to do some of those custom spreading the way that Profix does it. We didn't see in some of the other tools that we analyzed the capability to do that. We do personnel planning at that exact same time. And so after the data is in there, the data is verified, and the finance team and our management team go through several iterations of approval. The business leaders have visibility into those different versions, that initial budgeted version that they first, entered in, and then, the finance approved version, the initial finance approved version, and then the senior management approved version, and then their final version. And before, that was very, very cumbersome and very time consuming. The senior leaders, including the C-suite, now have online access to the rolled up data, and they could see things at any level in the organization. Our previous process, all of the entities completed Excel spreadsheets, and they sent them to a single resource here in the home office in Schaumburg in the accounting department, and that person's life for about a month or so was consolidating and rolling up all the data in those spreadsheets. The business leaders during that time frame had very little, visibility, almost no visibility into that until they were final versions. And we're estimating there's probably about, a 2-week or so savings for each of those 2 iterations that we do by using this automated process through Profix. Our first year when we first did it, our budgeting was still done in Excel, but our Excel templates were then, we used the capabilities, the import capabilities of Profix to pull those in. So the day-to-day of those business leaders, we didn't have to change that initially. They still used their Excel spreadsheets, but the data was then pulled into Profix to ease the consolidation and the roll-ups. I kind of touched on a little bit our forecasting. The business leaders look at their monthly Profix data and reforecast their business accordingly. We do this reforecast at mid-year, and we use the very same budgeting process. We call it Bud 2. The first one is budget, and the second one is Bud 2. So that version, becomes the leaders go into Profix and are able to do that. And the business value is what we talked about before. And we're looking at a future implementation to do that same planning and budgeting and reforecasting process, but do it at that customer project level. Right now, that is all done, on cocktail napkins or spreadsheets that our leaders use. It's all done in that vein. We're looking at using the power of Profix to do it in the future. From a reporting standpoint, the reporting data is available online through the ad hoc or templated reports, and then real time, and it's real time. So we load the data prior to each business day. So starting about 3 o'clock in the morning Central Time, we load that data in at that time. The business leaders don't have to wait for the wealth of spreadsheets and the PDFs that finance used to produce to send those around on either a centralized local drive or email them around. We don't have to do that anymore. They can actually jump right on a Profix and get to the data and again, it says most a day old. And then the users had the ability to drill into the detailed analysis for the ad hoc or templated reports. Formal personnel planning, as I touched on before, that's done at the budgeting and reforecasting time, and so is the formalized revenue planning. They use the monthly financial and operational planning data that is inside of Profix to be able to do that planning in between the formalized ones that happen twice a year. And then some additional data that we are able to provide. We have a big government business, and those global accounts that I talked about, as I mentioned, they had very little visibility into their day-to-day, what their revenue was, their profitability. And by implementing the cubes the way that we have, they are able to see that as soon as the data is loaded live. So these are the buzzwords. So the improved analysis, it's everything from, the budgeted actuals for a reforecast pro forma and its revenue cost, EBITDA, gross margin, slip, and what slip is, that's, what we estimated we were going to do for a gross margin for our costs, and then what the actuals, so we're able to compare actuals versus our estimated values, what percent complete our projects are, then billings and payments and DSO. That's sort of like the alphabet soup of the different pieces of data that we are able to analyze using Profix as the vehicle. And and what this allowed us to do, and it's kind of flows through, we're able now to do data-driven decision making. And the example that I wanted to give is in the financial and budgeting decisions. So I was sitting in our CFO's office at the end of 2015, getting ready to do our 2016 budgets. And I provided some information in my spreadsheet, and remember, it wasn't tied to Profix at that time. And I put a number in for our cell phone spend for my department, which is just the technology team. And our technology team, I think we have 5 or 7 cell phones. And when we looked at the actuals, when our CFO was looking at the actuals, he made the comments like, that number that you gave, Tom, that wouldn't cover 1/12 of the data of the amount that I see in the actuals. And so we pulled up a Profix report, a TTM report, and we were able to see that he is in fact right, that my number wouldn't cover 1/12 of it. And when we wanted to look, and the reason we did the TTM report is because we wanted to make sure there wasn't some anomaly. There was some month that was a gazillion dollars, and the other months were the number that I had. And we looked, and the numbers were pretty exact all the way across the board. So through the ad hoc, or through the drill across reporting that Tommy talked about, we are able to right-click on that templated report and drill into the spectrum data. And lo and behold, what we found out is that every person in the home office was charging their cell phone to my budget, which we would not have done. It probably would have taken forever to be able to analyze that. And within the matter of less than 5 minutes in the CFO's office, we were able to make the decision, that makes sense, Tom, you're in charge of technology, try to make that number smaller. And then we were able to, with this, be able to determine the profitability of the projects, the profitability in the global account and government businesses, and then key metric data such as, vehicle expense per head count. One of our largest expense is colleagues, our employees, but a great number of those actually have vehicles to be able to travel to our customer site. So one of our key metrics is what is the vehicle expense per head count that we had very little visibility into before that, by having Profix, it made it a lot easier. So some lessons learned, so getting the most out of the CPM software. For the financial consolidations I talked about before, to understand those entity and account structures and roll-ups very early on, and if you can do it, at least have a good understanding prior to the start of the implementation. A lot of that 2 months that, was part of our implementation wasn't really spent on being able to, create the reports or implement Profix. It was a lot of discussions between the convergent colleagues, the finance team and our senior management team, to understand where do we want things to roll up. And so a little bit of the churn in the beginning was a result of that. So that'd be something that I think that'd be a key thing to be able to do ahead of time. And then something else that we learned was to involve the subject matter experts in those cubes ahead of time. And what that does, it has a couple of pronged benefit in that, is that everyone always has their own Excel reports, and they cling to them, as tightly as, because it's their source of truth. Introducing another report, a Profix report, it was met initially with skepticism when we were doing that financial consolidation cube. And the people that were the early adopters was like, well, my report does this, or this number is this inside of my report, or my cell turns green if the number is greater than $1 million. Or I take this cell in this Excel report and multiply it by the phase of the moon to get my number. And so what we learned early on is to get, a 6 or 7 subject matter experts involved in those early report creations and the creation of the cubes. And what that does is a couple of things, is that helps stem those things that I talked about before. But then because they're involved in it, they become the product evangelists. So they're the ones that, that tell all the rest of the people throughout Convergent Nation that this is a great process. These reports are fantastic. And it turns their reports into our reports, which it was pretty cool. And then the last thing is to understand those things you spin the data by early on in the implementation, because your reports are only good as the design. So I think that is the last slide. Are there any questions that are out there? I'll turn it back over to Tommy.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much, Tom. It's always very enlightening to kind of obviously hear customer stories and see kind of some of the problems you had and how you resolved that. So yeah, definitely value add, and thank you so much for that. So what we want to do now is obviously just maybe take a quick minute for any questions that you might have. So if you have any questions, please just input it into the chat box. All right. So Tom, I think there's actually a question for you here.
Okay, good.
So my company is considering doing something similar, but I need to build a business case. Can you quantify the value that you have received from Profix, or how you were able to convince your executive team to invest in Profix?
The business case, we were kind of lucky that we didn't have to do a big detailed business case, because we didn't have another answer. We had all those challenges of the acquisitions, and we had the challenges of the visibility into the data. So we had to look for a solution, and it would have been, an exorbitant amount of money to be able to have a finance team create all these reports or continue to maintain the reports that they had. So we were kind of lucky. The business case was you need it, and look for solutions that are out there doing it. And when we looked out there, as I talked about, when we looked out in the solutions that were out in the space, we did a bunch of legwork, and we looked at a bunch of webinars and then a paper-based RFP. And the Profix solution was the one, as they were going through it, was the one that was the most intuitive. And our business leaders actually sat in on a few of those, and they were, you need to pick Profix. So that the business case sort of fell out of the sky for us. I don't know how much help I can be in that for producing a formal one, but it became very obvious that we needed it, and it became very obvious that Profix was the solution.
Awesome.
Anything else?
Nope, nothing else. So Tom, thank you so much. Thank you everybody that was on the line today. I really appreciate your time. So we're supposed to end at 2:45, so we actually have 1 minute that we're going to give back to you guys. So thank you so much again. If you have any questions, please email myself or email, obviously, just Profix, and we'll be happy to get back to you. All right, thanks guys. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.